Welcome to the Silent Stage Podcast. The Silent Stage Podcast is brought to you by Sweetwater, and today's guest is the original Helix guru, with over 1,000 videos on his YouTube channel covering not only the Line 6 Helix, but IK Multimedia's Tonex, Kemper, Fractal, and a newly added Quad Cortex. He has recorded 7 studio albums of original material alongside some of the best musicians in the studio world. He's also been published in Guitar World magazine, and he's been a columnist for Premier Guitar. He's just an all-around wizard of guitar tone. So please, welcome to the stage, Jason Sadites, or Sadites, or Sadites. I'm not really sure. All right, so Jason, set the record straight for everybody. How the hell do you pronounce your name?
Yeah, it's funny, right? So I did a video last week where I actually said it, and I got more comments about like, oh, finally we get to hear what you. It is Sadites.
Sadites. Okay.
Actually, it's actually pretty easy.
Okay, because I've always wondered. I've always said Sadites since.
Right. Well, it's kind of that's how it looks, right?
That's how it reads. I don't know what your Canadian pronunciation's up there.
Well, see, the name's actually I'm one of the really common combos of Italian Lithuanians in the world.
Oh yeah, those are huge. Yeah.
Yeah, they're everywhere, right? So yeah, but the name's Lithuanian actually. So
wow.
Yeah, Mom was born
cool.
in Italy, so I'm kind of probably more Italian than anything else, but yeah.
Very nice.
Lithuanian worked in there as well.
We'll actually be there again this year. We're ending our tour in Lithuania again.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Very nice. Say hi to my people.
That's actually my one modeler nightmare is from that Lithuania show where
No way.
I had my dual guitar preset and my cable snagged my preset knob.
Oh, good.
Which is why now I famously have gaff taped my preset knob down on my Helix.
Yep.
That was our Lithuania show.
I had the same thing happen to me at this metal show. I play in Toronto with some really great Toronto musicians. A bunch of guys get together, and it's like not rehearsed. We all just get up and do these 80s hair metal covers, right? And a lot of times I'll bring out the Rev generator amp and use the Helix and 4-cable method, and same thing. I think we were playing like an Iron Maiden tune, and somebody else's chord like just swept across. So now I had like not a 4-cable method preset. It was like a full-blown amp going through the amp, and it was...
Oh, at least you had sound. Mine was
awesome. Yeah,
mine went
sound.
blank.
That's good too.
So it turned.
I don't know. You know what? Maybe blank is better than some sounds. I don't know.
My god! So and it was during Jessica's guitar solo. So I'm supposed to be boosting her solo. And so her signal path was off, and mine was blank.
Great.
So I had bing, 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 bing,
awesome.
and she just had absolutely nothing.
Well, yeah, on the bright side, you could reamp years later. No.
Yeah, that's true. But that video is actually on my channel. If anybody ever wants to see that, my epic fail.
I think I watched that. You put that. That was a couple years ago.
Yeah, that was years ago. That was before the pandemic.
I remember that, yeah.
So speaking of amps, I want to ask what your rig was before amp modeling, and I kind of want to hear your journey from being a guy that was playing guitar amps, which I assume was a thing that you did, and
Absolutely.
What made you say, screw this, I'm going to buy into digital and be fine? Because I know you had a Kemper for a while, and what was before that? Take us back.
How far do you want me to go back, like to my day of birth, or do you want to...
Yeah, so what amp did you play? Was your umbilical cord taken out and plugged into the pedal board?
It was. How did you know? I think the first real decent rig I had was based around like a rack system, Marshall JMP1.
Oh, nice.
Amp, going into one of their... Do you remember the big gold 3-rack space tube power amps they had that kind of paired up with the JMP1?
Isn't that the Billy Gibbons rig?
It
the
could,
JMP one?
Yeah, it could be.
He uses Billy Gibbons uses. It's a 1-space rack.
It's a 1-space rack, and then they had both.
It's got presets.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you get like clean 1, clean 2, OD1, OD2 type of thing, right? And you MIDI controllable, but they paired it up with, they had a 50 and 100 watt tube power amp, right? I think they were EL34 based power amps, but I had that. It was as heavy as all could be. It was just, I had it in this like 1/2-inch plywood case on wheels, right? And played that into, I think, a 212 greenback loaded cabinet. So that was like the first kind of what I would say like really cool rig that I had was, and that was probably back early 90s, whenever they were, you know what the thing was? All my buddies had the ADA MP1 preamps, and that was like big right in the 80s, all the hair metal guys. And I can't remember what it was. I think I was teaching guitar at a music store, and they had they were Marshall dealers, so I could get a break on the cost of it. So I just went that route, and I was like, this is cool, right? And I think I had a Alesis Quadraverb was my effects processor, one of those old things. So that
seems
was
like everybody
cool.
had those.
Well, of course, you know what? That's what it was. It was all rack-based stuff, right? And then after I got tired of carrying that around, there was a good buddy of mine who's actually an amazing guitar player, Jimmy Reed. He's tours with a lot of bands up here, in Canadian bands, big name Canadian bands actually. And he was working at the time, like this is going back, you know, this is 1992, 91, whatever it was, a long time ago. And he was working at Steve's Music Store in Toronto, and they had just got this line of Buddha amps in. So I was like, Buddha, I've never heard of this, right? And another Canadian band called I Mother Earth, they were a pretty big Canadian band, great band. They were using them, so it kind of piqued my interest, and I tried one out and just fell in love with it. So
yeah, they were one of the original boutique amps, right?
100%, yeah. So kind of funny thing is I ended up buying one of those. I think I ordered it from Guitar Center in LA, the big one in Hollywood there. And, you know, got shipped up to, you know, me up in Northern Ontario, Canada, right? And showed up and just fell in love with this thing. I played that for years live. Like I can't, you know, countless gigs. And the funny story is I ended up selling that and always regretting it. And went onto Facebook Marketplace about a year ago, and a guy had one of the original hand-wired pre-PV versions of it. And I think I probably even overpaid a bit, but I was like, you just never see them. So
you need it.
I'm just going to buy it. I don't care. Like, okay, you know, I paid a few $100 too much, whatever. That's fine. You know, it is what it is. But
it can't be worse than what you paid to get it shipped to Canada.
Oh no, that was insane.
You overpaid
right?
for that one too.
Although, to be fair, shipping costs weren't quite as crazy as they are nowadays, right? But yeah, but still, it was like I think back then it was just the head. I think I had just the head, and later on. I actually ended up becoming really good friends with the guys at Buddha and becoming an artist and demos at their NAMM booth and stuff back in like maybe 2006, 2007. Became really good friends with Jeff, who was the guy who designed the amps, and then they got bought out by PV, and
we know that story. Yeah,
killer amps. So yeah, I did that with, you know, various iterations of pedal boards. Right. If you asked me all the pedals I went through over the years, I couldn't even begin to scratch the surface.
Were you a big board guy or small board guy? Effects loop just in front?
Yeah, it was always going to be a combination of front and loop, right? Like kind of more what we would be calling four cable method type thing now.
Yeah.
I remember one of the last boards I had all of the Eventide, you know, the pitch factor, time factor, all that stuff on, right? And yeah, and then I played that rig and you know, other amps in there that I would pick up here and there just because, you know, sell it, whatever, you know, like we all do, right?
Yeah.
And then, finally the Kemper thing hit the scene, right? Back in, what was that, 2012? Or
this is now as you're leaving your physical prime.
Yeah. What are you trying to say?
Nothing. Just
wait. I'm not still in my physical. As you guys know, I turned 50 this month, so it's physical.
Yeah,
prime
and
is,
we actually are neighboring birthdays. You're the first. Right. I'm the second.
That's right. That's hilarious, eh?
Yeah.
What did you turn this year? 34. Holy crap, eh?
I'm just now leaving my physical prime.
Right.
So
right. Yeah.
I'm relevant to the conversation.
I wish I could tell you it gets better, but
well, hey, the gear's getting smaller, so that, I guess in that sense.
Honestly, I mean, we joke about that, but it's absolutely a factor, right? Like, I mean, it is. I don't care what anybody says. Like, you know, I got all these amps behind me, and I hate the days where I have to get up and like move one of them to the other part of the room. You know? It's like, and wonder if that's going to put me out of commission for a week and a half. Right?
Yep. When you could just pick up the modelers and just okay. So Kemper. Now you went from all the boutique Buddhas to different amps, and now Kemper comes on the scene.
Yeah. So it was really intriguing, right? Because it was like, wait a second, this, you know, I can capture my thing and have it in this box. This is why. And I mean, you've got to, coming from a guy who, you know, was into it far before any of this technology existed, before there was any, you know, it's kind of mind bending to go like, what is this doing? Like, and it's doing it actually really well. Like this is crazy. And
how is this possible?
Right. And there's effects in there. And so I bought it, right? Kind of like, you know, wondering the whole time whether I'm doing the right thing, right?
Aren't we all always?
Well, always, right? And then I remember like my heart just sinking when I plugged it in and went through like some of the included captures. And I was like, this is awful. Like there's nothing about this that I like. I just hated it. It's like and you know what? But again, it's probably what so many people go through when they first are introduced to this stuff, right?
I think it's everybody's first initial thought when they're expecting, the amp in the room. I'm sure you deal with this all the time too with people writing this. You go from the speaker, flapping your pants and vibrating the walls to what
is this? Yeah.
Meanwhile, you have no real gauge unless you've been in the studio for years using an ISO booth.
Right.
You don't have any gauge of what your guitar amp sounds like in the room, mic'd up with headphones. Like you don't have any idea until you actually are able to do it. And that situation's so rare.
It's kind of funny. Like, I mean, I did do a fair amount of studio work leading up to that. So I was sort of used to that to a degree, but it's a different experience when you're sitting, say, mixing something after it's being recorded. And, you're in a studio, the amp might be in the other room, but you're still feeling something from that.
You have the rumble through the wall.
Right. You know what I mean? You always have something going on, unless you're in like, none of us are, recording an Ocean Way or anything, right? But I think the other thing is, a lot of us do just grab headphones and put on, and then maybe there's not even like an ounce of reverb on the sound or anything. So it's this like bone dry punch to the eardrum, right? And you just go like, what? This is the worst thing ever, right?
Yep.
So I was like, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to make profiles of my amps the way I like them. Mm-hmm. The second I did that, dialed some effects in on it, I was like, okay, perfect, done. This is great now, right?
And you trust the process.
100%.
Because with the Kemper and now with the Tonex and the Quad Cortex, you see so many third-party, and there's the cloud where you could upload your own. It's like you have no idea who's making these, how they're making them, and what process is going through it. Do they have any studio experience? Is this just some guy throwing a microphone in front of a cabinet? Is this just some guy plugging it in DI with a load box?
Or capturing another modeler?
I'm sure we could fool a lot of people.
Oh, you know what? To be honest with you, if you wanted to be dishonest about it, and I'm sure some people are, you could probably do captures of other modelers.
Yeah, I wonder how that would go over.
Tones, right?
It's like I have my Fractal FM9. It's like, hey, what if I captured my Fractal amps and posted them on Tonex? Would people lose their mind, or would they say, "Oh, that's great"?
Well, have you seen it? It's actually been done quite a bit. Quite a few people have done it, and a lot of people got kind of ticked off about it because they're like, "Oh man, in the case of say Tonex, like they're like, all Tonenet is a bunch of Kemper captures." You know what I mean? And so actually, the funny thing is, when I first started like offering Tonex captures and tone models, that was number one. I don't get it as much anymore, but I think as people see that I have the amps here in the videos and stuff like that, but a lot of people would be like, did you capture that off the real amp, or is that just the capture of your Helix preset or whatever, right? And I was like, no. I'm like, if there's something that I have up that I'm offering, it's a capture of real amp. I'm not going to obviously do that.
We're perpetually dishonest in the eyes of the audience, right?
Oh, well, we could do a 4-hour podcast, I'm sure, just on that topic. Right?
Oh yeah.
So I just wanted to jump in here and give you guys a quick thank you. Really means a lot that you're taking the time to listen to the episode with me and Jason. Jason also was cool enough to provide you guys with a free download of a Helix preset. You can find that in the show notes or the description if you're on YouTube. So let's hear Jason play along with this preset, and then we're going to get back to the discussion. Thank you guys again for watching, and enjoy the rest of the show.
All right, so let's get back to it then. You started making your own Kemper profiles, and that's when you started finding out, hey, this has a chance of sounding good. I really like this.
I did tons of sessions with for my own stuff for other people. It was just, life got so easy so quickly, right? Because I have my tones. I know kind of, intimately what each of these profiles sounds like. So if I have a session where I needed to do a specific tone, I just knew to boom, and you're playing, and you're not setting up a mic, you're not dialing things in, it's just done, right? And then obviously you could whatever in post-production if you wanted to, right?
And how rare is it the scenario where you get the time to set things up, put the mic exactly where you want it, go into the control room, listen, say, oh, it's a little harsh, let's move the mic a little bit. Like, I feel like the perspective we get kind of on YouTube of what studio work is like is on the very highest end, where you have
an intern.
Yeah, moving the microphone.
Yeah, that's in there with with the airplane things on, and they're like, "Hey, move the mic a little bit. Nope, a little bit this way." You have so much. It takes so much time to really get the sound right if you're going to do it in a studio the right way. Then all the post EQs and having all that takes so much time.
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah, I mean, you'd plug into the Kemper and I'd be done the session in the same amount of time it would have taken me just to get the guitar tone. And actually, one of the first things that piqued my interest, because I was the same as most people, was like, oh no, digital, ugh, turn your nose up at it.
We've all done it.
Well, of course, I feel like
right? Everybody has.
100%. I mean, so on my second album, so it probably would have been recording this maybe around 2007. So this would have even been pre-Kemper. But are you familiar with the guitar player out of Australia named Brett Garsed?
I'm not.
Go check him out. If you want to just sit there and dive down that rabbit hole and watch this guy play. He's like Guthrie Govan level of good, right? Like just amazing, and a real sweet guy too. So I was always a fan of his playing. So I hired him to play a guest solo on one of the tunes on one of my albums, which he did, and he sent it through over to me. And obviously the performance was spectacular, but I was totally blown away by the tone. So I emailed him back and I'm like, dude, I hope you don't mind me asking, like, what was your setup for this tone? He's like, oh, I used Native Instruments Guitar Rig 5. And I was like, you did what? Like, fine. I'm great. It's because it's absolutely spectacular, right? It's great. But yeah, so I was like, oh, okay. Maybe I'm wrong. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm kind of, just snobby towards something that I maybe should be looking into a little bit more, right?
I had the same experience where one of Jessica's albums we recorded in Belgium. So she wrote and recorded it in Belgium. And they had this guy, Tom Ludvigs, who's incredible. He's basically like a Justin Derrico type of guy in Belgium. He plays on The Voice. He's like the go-to session guy. Yeah. So we were all excited. I was like, oh, I can't wait to see what he's going to bring. Like, it's going to be like the cartridge rig. He's going to have like the refrigerator of amp heads. And at this point, I was the same way where it's like, hey, I can't, it's got to be tubes. It's got to be analog. It's got to be right. And I'm waiting to see this guy show up with all this stuff. And he shows up with a briefcase, a rack SKB briefcase, puts it down. And I'm like, yeah, well, where are the amps? He goes, 99% of the time I use this Fractal Axe-Fx 3. And I'm like,
oh,
all right, fine. We'll see how it sounds.
Yeah. Because you're going to tell this guy that it's not good.
Yeah. And then the sounds, he's such an amazing player, and it sounded so good. And I was like, okay, well, like same thing you said. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, and that's an important thing to be able to admit, right?
Yeah.
On all levels, in everything in life, right?
Of course.
To just go like, yeah, guess what? I was wrong. That's okay. That's what life's about.
This guy that's doing this at the highest of levels in Europe is saying that 99% of the time this is what he uses. Who the hell am I to say I know better?
Yeah, it's crazy, eh? And so at the time, I don't think it was going to make me go like, well, that's it. I'm selling everything and I'm using Guitar Rig 5, right? But it was just kind of like, okay. So that stuck with me. Like, again, that would have been even like, 5 or 6 years before the Kemper, right? Or whatever it might have been. So, it was always in the back of my mind, and I was just kind of always like, So I started exploring it a little bit, but I was like, I don't know. I'm still not like sold,
anytime you didn't like your guitar sound, you're like, man, should I just try it?
Right.
Should I just try it? Should I just try it? And you talk yourself out of it.
Yeah. But there's the other side too, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. You can sit there and dial a tone in that you think sounds terrible, and then you hear it in the mix, and it's just like the perfect tone for the mix, right?
Most likely the opposite for me. I'll dial in something I think is awesome, and then get to rehearsal or the mix, I'm like,
Yeah. Well, but so many times I find with the digital stuff is people go like, oh, listen how terrible it sounds. And it's like, wait a second, I don't think you've ever really experienced what like in the mix tones sound like out of the mix, like they aren't that thing that, is the pants shaking thing in the room that's, all of that stuff you like in the room is just going to probably screw your mix up, right?
Yeah,
like
and
that's
now we live in this crazy AI generation of people ripping the stems.
Oh, it's crazy, eh?
Or people are posting, I guess, I don't know if they own the songs or not, but people are posting these raw guitar tracks.
Yeah.
And it's like, sounds like shit.
Right?
It's so harsh and biting. Oh my God. But in the mix, it's like
throw the kick drum and the bass in there and a couple other guitars panned left and right. And and you're like, wow, this is killer, right? This is amazing. Have you messed around with any plugins from the company Isotope?
Just the repairing ones.
They're kind of, I guess you'd call it their stem mixer plugin now, right? Like you could take your final mix and like bump the vocals up a couple dB or pull them back, and it's really transparent.
I've been using RipX. It's pretty cool. It'll rip the stems, and it's pretty decent at it, and it'll also spit you out the chords.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
It's probably a little too advanced. Like even songs, like it'll give you the melody as the chord extension. So it'll give you give you a piano roll with all the notes that you could hit bass, guitar, and it'll pump out the chords.
That's crazy.
And rip the stems. So and it's got a slow down software in it. It's like what a world. So now where'd you wind up now? You're back. You're sold on Kemper now. Kemper's in for you.
Yeah, did a bunch with Kemper, but then it was the same thing that still goes back and forth: modeling versus profiling, right? Like component modeling versus profiling. So, I remember when Helix was first, what was it, 2015?
I think 15.
15? Man, it's so hard to keep track of dates, man. I'm telling you. As the years go by, everything just kind of...
Well, now that you're 50, you've probably lost a third of your...
Who are you again? Everything just gets blurry. But I think it was, probably 2015 it was released. Do you remember when they had up on the website that real amp versus Helix? And I don't know if you remember that.
I don't remember that now.
They had a little play button and something along that lines, and you could like flip back and forth between the real amp and this and that and the other. I remember listening to it and going, man, that sounds really cool. And, obviously it was in its, early versions. We didn't have half the stuff we have now in there, right? But it was always then in the back of my mind like, oh, man, wouldn't it be cool to not have to just like find the right profile or create the right profile? Wouldn't it be cool to just have that amp in there and be able to turn, the bass up or, the gain control or the master down or whatever, right? And then like all these extra effects too. So I think that's at that point, I think I had that fairly big board with all the Eventide stuff. And it was like just kind of, there's a lot of money wrapped up in that board. And I'm like, man, if I even just unloaded this board, that would pretty much cover the cost of getting. I think I bought a Helix LT to start off with, right?
Yeah. So what were your first impressions? And let's actually say, what were your first road bumps with the Helix? Because obviously you have become Mr. Helix resource for anyone that buys or is thinking about buying a Helix. There's zero chance that you're going to get on YouTube and not come across one of your videos that are always so thorough, educational, and offer so much to the community. But I assume that there has to be some level of trial and error in your first forays with the Helix. So I'm curious to see and hear what did you struggle with at first? Like when you first plugged it in, I assume you love the stock presets.
Well, who doesn't?
For those that don't know, that's a big inside joke with
everybody?
With the Helix that no one ever uses the stock presets.
Well, first, thanks for the kind words on the videos. But I think first of all, I already was past that initial shock of moving to the digital world, right? So Kemper got that out of my system for me, right? So I didn't have that to deal with, which was, I think, probably a good thing, right? Because
so no mental hump, no thought process of, oh my God, is this going to be okay?
That's right. Like I know what to expect. Like if I put a set of headphones on with a bone dry amp, it's probably going to sound the same as any other modeler that's going to do that, right? The fact that I had done a fair amount of studio work previous, I think why I've maybe had a fair amount of success in helping people to kind of approach Helix is I kind of approached it as if I was working in the studio. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Amp, mic. I was familiar with a lot of the mics in the cabs because I'd owned them and I'd used them in a real studio. So, I mean, that's an advantage. Somebody who's never mic'd a guitar cab, isn't going to, and I mean, back then, to be fair, we didn't have the movable mics off and on axis and whatnot, right? But even just the distance control was huge, right? Like, I mean, you could really clean up a ribbon mic by pulling it back 4 or 5 inches or 6 inches or whatever, right? Just like in the real world, right?
It's funny. This is the exact same answer that Richie Castellano gave in different words when
Really,
I had Richie on first episode, and he said, not that it's a criticism, but one of the things that people get wrong about the Helix is that it works exactly the way it's supposed to.
100%. Yeah, exactly.
And maybe the default settings aren't perfect, but
well, they seldom are in the real life when you just throw a mic up in front of the cabinet either, right? So I mean, So I mean, just starting off by saying, you know what, I'm going to throw like a little room reverb at the end of my chain here, just so that it's there, so I don't feel like I'm playing into an unnatural space, right?
It takes experience to know that.
100%. But so, and I think a lot of people don't do that, and that could very well be one of the reasons why they go, well, this sucks. This sounds terrible.
Yeah, of course.
Here, let me just drop this little subtle and then you suggest that, and people are like, well, I don't like reverb. You're like, well, it's not what I know. I get it, but that's not. I'm not suggesting you like drown it in a cavern, right? It's just like put this on for a second, pull the mix back a bit, just get it so that, and they're, oh wow, that's a lot better. Yeah, because we live in a world of hearing, reflections, and it's just the way it is. So you put that there, and then get the and if you've used some of these amps, you kind of have an idea of where to set the tone stack so that it works. Something like a Marshall Plexi, it's not going to be massively influential, right? You can kind of crank things up or whatever, but then get that microphone in there, and then what else do I do in the studio? Well, geez, a lot of times at the end, you put a little subtle compression on it, or I use a little tiny bit of EQ in these frequencies to kind of let things sit better. And, I kind of like a little bit of delay time to the music, tap tempo to the music, or the quarter note on certain things. And boom, 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 boom. There it is.
And I think it's like, I also think this is what attracts people to third-party impulse responses, is because at first with the stock cabs, somebody that really doesn't know, like you said, that doesn't have that experience, it's kind of like, well, what the hell do these numbers mean? What is a 50? I mean, I assume everybody knows what a 57 is, but why do I assume that everybody knows what a 57 is?
And you know what? What you just said there was one of the biggest awakenings for me. Is I made the assumption going in that, well, everybody knows this or everybody knows that, and you know what? They don't. And that's not sound to talk down to anybody. That's not to. But I mean, honestly, if you've never had the opportunity to get to know certain pieces of information, then you don't know them. If somebody told me to fix a car, I don't know what to do, but I will go to a mechanic who does, and he'll tell me all the right things, and he'll do the right thing. So
and then
because he has experience, right?
All of a sudden you buy a mechanic kit, and you're starting from zero, having no experience or understanding of how or what anything is. And like I said, that's not anybody's fault, but it's almost like you take your knowledge for granted. But there's so many people out there that are using this stuff that don't have any idea, and that kind of jolts the third party impulse response push. Like, oh, I've got to. Because it also bypasses that experience, because, you go to somebody like York Audio or somebody like you that's actually making these, somebody that knows what they're doing, somebody that knows the mics, that knows the EQ, that knows how to set the stuff up properly. You don't have to learn how to do it.
That's right. It's plug and play, right? Drop it in there, off you go. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if and this is what I would always say to people.
Better for workflow.
100%. And, I was a very big advocate for the stock cabs in the Helix for one simple reason, simplicity. Like, if you don't have to worry about managing more files, you know what I mean? Like, if I'm sharing a preset with somebody, okay, well, here's the IR, and then you have to assign that in this slot, and da-da-da-da. If I can just load it up and it's the stock cab that's in the preset already, it's just so much easier, right?
Yeah.
And you could get the tones. Yeah, you might have to spend an extra like 30 seconds kind of knowing what you're doing and doing this. And the funny thing is, along those lines of this sort of the assumption that people know things, or everybody knows these things. And I mean, let's be honest, also, there are a lot of people out there that are extremely knowledgeable, right?
Yeah.
And that's something I always try to be really careful of in my videos. I'm like, look, if you already know this and you have a different way of working and it works for you, then off you go. Like, you don't need to be watching me. You don't need to listen to me.
There's no right way to do any of this.
No.
The end result needs to be the goal.
Yes. But the amazing thing is, no matter how many times you qualify that, look, this is the way I do it. The only reason I'm doing this video is because I had 100 people ask me, I'm not telling anybody they have to, you don't have to. If you're doing it the exact opposite of what I'm doing and it works, why are you even here? Carry on. I'm not, we can still be friends. It's all good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The way that I even got started with the Helix videos, and it was really interesting because I never in a million years would have been the person, or thought I would have been the person to do that. But I had an old school acquaintance of mine from back in grade school send me a Facebook Messenger message shortly after I got the Helix. And he's like, I don't know, I posted a video of a live performance I did or something like that sparked him to reach out and say, man, I'd love you to do just videos of your playing guitar solo covers, just, pick some cool, I think he mentioned Rush because he knew I was a big Rush fan growing up and whatnot. So the next day I was like, okay. So I drew up a video of, the Limelight guitar solo and the Tom Sawyer guitar solo and threw them up on YouTube. And they got a fair amount of attention out of nowhere. And I think I posted them in the Helix group, probably Chad's Helix group or something like that, right? People were like, wow, that's so cool, man. That's awesome. That tone is really, really good. I like how'd you get that tone? And I'm like, I don't know. I just dialed it up in 30 seconds and it worked. So I hit record and off I went, right? Didn't even think that this was a thing. Again, the assumption is everybody with a Helix knows what they're doing and it's going to do it. Right?
Funny is the knowing what you're doing with the cabinet section versus impulse responses. When you buy an impulse response pack,
it's done.
It's overwhelming.
Oh yeah, there's 800 choices, and you sit there scrolling through, right?
But instead of scrolling and auditioning 150. Just look up. I mean, there's so many resources on YouTube. Mine's Tim Pierce is always my number one go-to.
Tim's fabulous, right?
Oh, yeah,
it's spectacular, yeah.
But I look at how he mics up a cab, and this is how I started doing it. I'm like, okay, he uses an SM57 or Royer 121 ribbon mic, and he just mixes those to taste. Okay, HX edit. I have a 57.
Oh, look at that!
I have a 121. Yeah. Oh. I can do this myself, and
100%.
I can tweak it until. Meanwhile, that probably took me 15 minutes to learn. Where by the time you audition all the impulse responses, holy crap, you're talking about
which you're then going to have to do on every preset.
Every preset,
instead of having this sort of instinctive knowledge. And that's what it becomes. I've used that term before. It becomes instinctive. It's like, oh, what tone do I want? Oh, I know how to make that. That would be this mic at this distance on this cab, right? And it's just, how do you know that? It's like, I just have done it 800 times. So, and it might not be perfect the first second, but 10 seconds later, it kind of is. You know what I mean? Or whatever, right?
You got to just not write it off.
Right, yeah. So what I was saying is I did a few of these solos, and then it got fun because I was getting a lot of comments, and then I was like, you know what, I'm gonna see if I can just pick some really challenging stuff to play because I thought that'll probably get more eyes on it, and as everybody does when they're making videos, the more people that watch it, the nicer it is if you put the work into it, right? And so what ended up starting to happen after I did maybe 20 or 25 of these solo videos is people really were interested now in I can't get these sounds out of my Helix. How are you getting it to sound like that? You did this John Petrucci tone, then you did an Alex Lifeson tone, then you did a Larry Carlton tone on a Steely Dan tune, and then you did, and it's how are you? And I was putting a fair number of them out, so people were like, how are you getting these tones so fast? And I'm sitting there reading the comments, and I'm like, well, I don't know. I'm just opening it up and I'm dialing it in really quick, and And then, can you do, finally somebody's like, can you do a instructional video on how you work with the Helix? And my first thought to that was, no.
Who's going to watch that?
Nobody's going to watch that. I'm not, I don't want to come across as some arrogant know-it-all who, oh, yeah, this is the way you have. So I was like, really? And then a couple other people, and I was like, well, okay, I guess I can show you. So I always just approach it as, look, this is how I do it. I mean, if it helps somebody, then great. If there's something in here you don't like, then, everybody knows that I like to put the LA Studio comp at the end of my chain. Really subtle. Mm-hmm. I've taken more heat over that through the years.
How dare you?
Oh, my goodness. And it's you see the little X up there? Just click that. Now it's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there you go. It's and I'm not telling you have to do it, but then on the other hand, probably 5,000 people have reached out to me over the years and said, man, I love that. That just makes everything great. And you go, great, there's your answer, right? But then that first video I did, that Create a Great Tone, right? Helix,
which you're still doing now.
Still doing, because it's like people really enjoy it. And I've had so many people reach out over the years and say, like, this did it for me. This fixed things for me. And you know, I like to update it because we get new blocks in the Helix over the years, and this added and that added. I don't know if you remember, before we had the shelf EQ, I was doing that split crossover thing, right? Just to kind of mimic a shelf EQ. And then Eric Klein was like, that made us realize we didn't have a shelf EQ, and I can't believe we didn't have a shelf, you know, and he's like, so we put a shelf EQ, and it's like, oh, perfect. That's awesome. You know, great.
Hats off to Eric and Igor and the team for
100%.
Participating in the content and, you know, seeing what the community has to say about it and then making those changes. That's cool.
Absolutely. So then it just became like that video raised 50 other questions from people, which gave me another idea for another video. And then it just grew exponentially, where it was like every video I put out had, 50 new people asking me questions about this topic. I was like, well, I might as well just keep throwing videos out there. And then, here we are. It's, whatever it is, 7 years later, 8 years later, whatever it
And there has to be
right?
over 1,000 Helix only videos.
There's a lot. Yeah.
And the good thing is that it covers every topic, from how to build a tone from scratch, how to do more advanced stuff. And you're so thorough in your explanation that it's like, I almost feel like you're a college professor, because I didn't go to any type of music school or engineering. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Mine has always been trial and error and learn on YouTube.
Which is nothing wrong with that either.
No,
that works great in a lot of ways, right?
End result is the key. That's you always got to remind myself that end result is what matters.
Well, you can end up overcomplicating everything to the umpteenth degree, and then just scrapping it all and starting over, and you've just wasted 2 hours. Right?
I've done that plenty.
We've all been there, right? We've all been there.
Absolutely. But that's part of the journey. Learning is struggling, I feel like, and learning how to overcome the stuff. If it was easy, then everybody would use the stock presets.
100%.
You know, people are afraid to turn knobs, and they're afraid to learn. It's almost like they're afraid that they're going to break it. But it's like,
it can always go back, right?
And never in any guitar player's existence have they just showed up to a venue or a studio, put their amp there, and just played.
Yep.
0 times.
0 times. Yeah.
They have probably notched settings that if the knob changed in transit, guess what? Boom, boom, boom. Here's my go-to settings. Every single
At
gig.
least as a starting point, because the new room is going to be different, right? No, I gotta tweak this. Tweak that.
This has a Sennheiser mic. This place has a 57,
which is wildly different.
Yeah. And now there's no mic stand, so it's dangling.
Right, pointing at the floor and being hitting
a Beta 58 dangling in front, dangling on the grill cloth,
being used as a side address mic, right?
And you're like, what am I doing here?
But so anyways, that's where that went, and and I even redo some videos now, as stuff that I did early on, and do a shorter version of it. That's one of the funniest things, and you could probably attest to this too, is like when I first started this, I don't know, it would be 7 or 8 years ago probably that I did that first Helix video. Even in that short period of time, there was an appetite for longer form videos. Mm-hmm. There no longer is an appetite for longer form videos.
Nope.
So I, to this day, still have people going back to those first ones and just tearing me a new one.
Dude, so boring. Dude, get to the point.
How dare you talk for 35 minutes? How dare you? And they're completely insulted by this, right? They're just disgusted.
Dude, get to the point.
Right.
Get to the point, dude.
Right. And it's like, well, you don't have to watch, first of all. And I mean, if there's a piece of information here that was going to help you, then... I mean, I used to give 30-minute guitar lessons. Nobody complained that a guitar lesson was 30 minutes. They wouldn't have wanted it shorter, because you couldn't really learn anything in less than that. But we now live in the generation of TikTok and 8-second clips of video and audio that if you haven't summed up 30 minutes of information in 15 seconds, then, So that's why I started this whole, like, quick tips thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's how
and I know you did the same thing, right? You did the same thing. And that was smart, right? Like,
I went the opposite route because...
You started off, right? With the short, condensed ones.
Yeah, and I didn't want to be a Jason copy where I'm like, oh, well, Jason's got these, really long, thorough videos. What can I do to make my own space in this and help people, because I think I was doing the same thing where,
Yep.
you know, I'm posting gig videos and I'm posting that I'm, you know, touring with my Helix and I'm using it. And, you know, same thing, people asking me a million questions. How can I answer these questions and do it in a way that's not, you know, copying Jason? And then it's like, oh, Jason does these long, so I'll try to get everything I
100%.
can in 2 minutes. And that was my first thing was
I remember the 2-minute tip.
I wanted to start doing YouTube, and I was like, you know, I met all you guys online.
Yep.
And just internet friends. And then it was like, you guys were very encouraging to try it. And it was Johnny Lee that pushed me the hardest to, mate, you got to put out content. Like, that was my awful Scouse accent.
Yeah, well,
But
that's close enough. I thought Johnny was there with you for a second.
Yeah,
I had
right?
To take I had to take a second look. Is Johnny's hiding away?
The new generation of short form, it's like, I actually probably should go back to it, because I've almost gone the opposite, where I'm doing more thorough demos and stuff, and I'll wonder why the hell it doesn't get any traction. Meanwhile, I probably grew the most doing the 2-minute things, because that's when that was hot.
Yeah. Well, I just found that, so I started doing that kind of quick tips for Helix, quick tips for Tonex a couple months, 2-3 months ago. But at the same time, if that's what's going to be able to present a piece of, instead of presenting 15 pieces of information, I'll present one.
Yeah.
Right.
And then you get more mileage out of the content, because the people that want the 30-minute video are going to watch 15 2-minute videos.
Absolutely. But you know what's funny is, like, I've already had people going, I've had a couple comments where, and I said this to my wife before I started this. I said, you watch what's going to happen. I'll do like 20 of these, and somebody will say, you should just put these all together into one big video. And I've had that comment. So I'm like,
you can do that too. That's the beauty of the short form, is that you can put a playlist into one video, just edit them on one another, and make it like you're watching Star Wars Saga.
Yeah,
in one clip.
But it's just funny. You just end up to the point where you want to bang your head against the wall, because you go, well, I did do that, but everybody yelled at me, so I did the shorter ones. But now you're telling me to paste the shorter ones together into a longer one, which I did do, but I got yelled at for. So you know, it's like, you just gotta go, like, you can't win for trying, right?
Yeah,
like,
that's the long story short, is that there's no winning.
There's no right answer. There's just no right answer, right? Whatever you do is going to be wrong.
I was watching a lecture on the guy that owns and runs Patreon, and he said that's like where creators get so lost, is that you start chasing the algorithm and you start chasing what's going to do well, and it's like you forget that you should be making your art or whatever your thing is because you want to, not because YouTube wants you to.
100%. Yeah, and but it's tough because it's very time consuming. It's very expensive. I mean, you know, let's sit and add up all the gear in our studios. How much does it cost?
Yep.
It's wildly expensive. And if anybody, you know, I always laughed. People would be like, oh, he does long videos because that's how he makes more money off YouTube. It's like, I'll like to show you what I make off YouTube. You will realize quickly that it doesn't even begin to cover the cost of what it takes to have a setup to be able to do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's hard not to get stuck in that trap of saying, like, well, I need the content to do reasonably well, because otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
it's so hard. It's like, and then there'll be videos that I'm like, I stopped doing B-roll in my videos because I was doing demos, and I'm like, I love cinematography. I studied cinematography in the pandemic. That was like my project.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I'm shooting these like fancy, sharp B-roll with the blurry backgrounds and all like this sexy stuff. And then I'm putting hours and hours additional work into my content, and I'm not seeing any return on views because that's not what the viewer's focused on. The viewer doesn't care that the pedal looks sexy in B-roll shots. They want to hear what it sounds like and know how to use it. My most popular video on my channel's got over 1 million views of the stupid Amazon Basics pedals.
Right, but that's brilliant. Like, well, that was when I saw you put that out. I'm like, that's freaking great, man. That's so cool. I mean, and obviously people want to see it.
Yeah, I mean, the video cost me $200, and I've made significantly more than that on the 1 million
good
views.
Lord.
But
absolutely,
it's done so poorly. You know, from a cinematography standpoint, from an audio standpoint, it's just me, you know, bullshitting, showing the pedals. My camera dies on the last pedal. I had a top-down shot on the pedals that were haphazardly thrown on my dining room table before I even had a studio room. I used to shoot in my dining room. And I had a camera shooting down at my desk, and they were just plugged into a 9-volt daisy chain with my cell phone shooting down. And, they had the record limits of 20 minutes or whatever, 29 minutes.
Yeah.
So by the time...
How dare you do a 20-minute video? Who do you think you are?
There you go. So by the time I got to the delay pedal, it died. And I'm like, well, fuck, I can't redo. I'm not redoing the whole video. So I just put it out. The camera dies. And I just put in text, sorry, my camera stopped filming. Nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
No. But
I know.
I could have spent an extra 4 hours shooting fancy B-roll of each pedal. Meanwhile, my B-roll became this.
Yeah, holding it up and hoping the focus catches, right?
There it is. That's my Amazon Basics distortion.
Right, yeah. And then hoping the focus goes back on you when you remove it.
And then shame on me for not repeating the process that works, that I tried to overcomplicate and make things better than they should be. And I'm like, you know what? At the end of the day, be yourself and just do it,
Grassroots stuff, where you just were
It was fun.
It was fun, yeah. And people are going
it used to be fun.
Right. And people are going like, oh, dude, that helped me so much. And you're like, oh, that's awesome. I'm super happy that helped you,
So moving on from Helix stuff, obviously, because you and I have we've dipped our toes into all the pools, it seems like. You just got a quad cortex. You've been doing a ton with IK and the Tonex, and your series on Tonex also helped me insanely a lot because I just didn't have the time to read any of the manuals on that. And if I don't read the manual, I either read the manual or I watch a Jason video. And I'm thankful that we have the same gear in most aspects. So
yeah, we do. We do share a lot of crossover. So maybe I should just get like a robe and an ascot and a pipe and just sit in a big chair reading manuals.
So you also had a Fractal for a little bit, but didn't jive with it.
I had an FM3. There was nothing that I would say negative about it. There was no reason why I, did a little bit of content with it. I don't know if you agree with me on this, but like the Helix and Fractal communities are the ones who like butt heads the most and like argue back and forth about which is better or worse.
Well, back then, I guess there was really only the two main players. Now,
right.
Now there's so many, and people are so tribalistic about their choice.
That's it. It becomes religion, right? Almost
or
in a way, or politics, or all the things that nobody should really be, that we were brought up being told not to talk about in public, over the Thanksgiving dinner table.
Exactly.
But yeah, so I did videos on it, and man, it was just like it was brutal. Like people were just like, "Oh, yeah, I don't listen to anything this idiot says because he's a Helix shill," and this was like,
oh god, that's the worst thing.
And I was just like, dude, I had some people ask me about how I would work on Fractal, so I grabbed one of these, which I bought full price. Nobody handed me anything, nobody gave it to me.
That's the hardest thing, is that people think that you're tied to the piece of gear that you post videos about.
Yeah,
I mean, me and the Tonemaster Pro have been pretty love-hate. There's a lot of things I don't like conceptually about it. There's a lot of things I don't like sound-wise and choices that were made. And if you criticize a piece of gear, it's, oh, well, he's a Helix guy. But like I have all of them and I use them all. I mean, I wind up coming back to Helix mainly because of workflow, ease of use, and adjustment on the fly. Even if you want to argue sound quality, which I don't agree with, it comes down to ease of use for me, and that's where I keep coming back to Helix. But to say that I'm biased I feel like it's nonsense. Like, it's not that important to me to defend Helix when, again, I have no actual affiliation with the company.
Yeah.
I don't defend Helix or put down other units because of Helix. Like, it's just my opinion.
Well, I think, and I've said this, and it's not just me said it. You hear many people say this, but has there ever been a better time to be a guitar player?
Like, oh no, so many options.
If you can't grab any one of these flagship modelers and get a great tone out of it in a relatively short period of time, the problem is not the gear, right? I mean, I hope that doesn't sound like I'm, talking down to anybody, but
I say the same thing. Anytime I do a comparison, the first thing I say off the bat is these can sound as good or as bad as you can make them sound.
Yes. And there's endless A/B blind comparisons on the internet. Always this kind of 50-50-ish split. I liked clip A. I liked clip B. I thought clip A was this. I thought clip B was this.
And there's always the guy that guessed right. That's like, see, I knew it.
See, I told you. Yeah, I know. And you're like, okay, dude, that's good. Glad
I feel like
it.
to actually say that you can hear a difference between the modelers, you've got to go 10 for 10 with four examples at least.
Absolutely.
And you've got to not only be able to identify your favorite, but you've got to be able to identify the real one and the least favorite. And you've got to be right 10 out of 10 times.
Yeah, 100%.
To really say that one is better than the other or that you can really tell the difference. No one's going to put that time into a real case study, but
most of the time the comparisons aren't even done properly. Like if you're not reamping these and matching the volumes to within like a tenth of a dB, then it's a totally pointless. And I see it so often. Somebody's like, "Oh yeah, see this person's test, it proved this," and you watch it and you're like, No, that didn't prove anything. That just, it proved you liked the louder clip.
Yeah.
That's what that one proved, and that one proved you liked that performance better than that performance.
And then there's the latency crowd that are obsessed that are obsessed with latency numbers. And
again, I mean, whatever floats your boat. If that's what you're into, and like, honest to goodness, I don't think I've ever plugged into any of these and given the latency even a second of thought. I just play and go, yep, feels fine to me.
Well, there's the guy Leo Gibson who does insanely thorough content. He does really good stuff, but he always does.
I don't think I've seen his stuff before.
He publishes the latency tests. He does the whole big thing. So I'll throw it over to go watch his video if you care that much about latency. But for me, I'm like, do I notice it? No. Do I care?
Yeah.
No.
Well, it was on the Tone X1. That's what everybody was like, well, how's the latency? I'm like, I didn't measure it. Why didn't you measure it?
Because you don't care.
I just plugged into it, played it, and it was like, no, it's great, right? One of the bands I play with lately, my live board now is HX Stomp with an Eventide H90, Morningstar MC6 Pro, couple Mission Engineering expression pedals, and there's almost nothing I can't do.
You have unlimited power in that setup.
It's ridiculous. And it's on a Temple board that fits, I can pick up with one hand, and it's like, 8 pounds or whatever. I don't actually know what it is, but it's super light, right?
Yeah. Play
that through a power cab, 112 or 212, and off we go. So a lot of times in this band, we're down tuning and stuff. So I'm using the drop tuning feature in the Eventide H90. I think it's a little better than the Helix version.
Are you using the drop tune then pre-amp or using it post?
Pre.
So do you have two effects loops?
Yep. So I have one of the algorithms in the H90 before the stomp and one after the stomp.
In loops, so you can interchange, or is it always... Because you don't need the loops. You could do one before,
I don't even
after.
think I have it in loops. No, I just have one before and one after, because I don't really think I would... any of the other effects I got to move around, I can do that on the stomp, right?
Yeah, so you're going into from the H90 into your DI box.
Right, into...
into and then out of also.
Right. As good as the whole drop tuning thing is on it, it still does add a little latency. Like, they do, right?
Well, that's actual signal processing that's going to...
Right, and it's heavy signal processing. So... Yeah. I can feel it, but guess what? I just play, and nobody at any show I've ever played goes like, "Oh, things were kind of off."
So you're new to Quad Cortex and Tonex. Well, not new to Tonex. You obviously helped launch Tonex. We were both a part of that launch, which was awesome. Good. It's funny, since the Tonex launch, I've seen a very big shift in your studio, where you have a lot more.
No idea what you're talking about.
a lot more going on behind you than previous. There's like the pre-Tonex Jason studio where it was just the VGA guitars hanging in the back, and your stool, your performance stool. And since Tonex, I've noticed a couple of things changing back there.
Yeah, man, the collection has grown considerably. With the Tonex, it got me kind of excited again about the whole capturing, since back, did do it back with Kemper years and years ago. I do have a Kemper stage again too now, because I figured with the amps, why would I not capture them again for Kemper as well, right? Yeah, the Tonex thing. So it's just great, right? Because is there anything more fun than getting a great mic and a great, mic pre and signal chain and getting those tones dialed in and then capturing them in all of these, right? So yeah,
When you know what you're doing, yes.
Yes, when you have some sort of idea of what you're doing. Yeah,
And now it's a luxury for the consumer too, because the Tonex was it's not even $200.
Oh,
the Tonex one,
the Tonex
179.
one,
It was 180 US, I think.
I think that's what it was. Yeah, even the big boy though is what, $399 or $299? I don't know.
That's such a ridiculously cheap bargain
Crazy.
for
Crazy.
what you're getting. They say the Tonex does have the most accurate representation of the real amp sound that you can get in a hardware form. It's such a no-brainer for people to even just have, because you can even use it as a multi-distortion pedal. Like you could just have
100%.
you could just turn the knob and get all the distortion pedals that you don't want to buy or you don't want to put on your board. Yep. It's just such a no-brainer. And it's for guys that never got to try a Dumble. Guess what? You can try Joe Bonamassa's Dumble.
Yeah.
What other world do you live in that you can get a professionally mic'd, studio quality representation of one of the most famous amps in the world?
Doesn't exist.
Isn't that cool?
It's crazy.
Like,
and literally, like we said, right? Like literally, there's my hand, right? It's like,
don't worry, it looks big in your hand.
yeah. It's crazy, man. It's like just nuts, that this thing, you could carry two of these in one hand, right? And,
yeah. And now me and you are buying up amps and back it's going reverse now.
It's been so much fun to get back into capturing these. I actually, when I'm setting up to do a series of captures, it's just been exciting, like I can't wait to, dial this in and get it set up. And
it's the best of both worlds, because you get that old analog feel of, I'm micing the cabinet, I'm really doing it. I have the amp in the room. I'm getting the excitement of the air being pushed, and then I'm capturing that.
Yep. And you know what the beauty of it is too, is like there's so many guys doing great captures, but everybody's approach is different. So it's not even a sense of like competition. It's like I've heard other guys' captures. I've heard a lot of captures I don't like, and I've heard some that I'm like, man, it sounds killer. It sounds different than if I had captured it, because I'd probably do it a different way, different mic choice, placement, signal chain, whatever. But they're all viable options, right? And there's so many tastes too, right? Like line up 100 people, you're going to have a lot of opinions about what good, quote unquote, good tone is, right?
Yeah,
and
of course.
rightfully so. That's what makes the world go round. We don't all like the same food, we don't all like the same tone, and that's fine, right? Like, there's a lot of things that can work.
Do you separate direct captures from with cabinet captures, or are they all in one pack?
Oh, you know what? I did both, and I've still don't know which is the right way to do it.
Yeah, because I'd be curious which one people would prefer, if they prefer their own impulse responses or their own cabinets.
There's a whole school of thought about this that, and I think it's almost split up the middle. There's some people that will play nothing but DI captures, and others that don't want anything to do with them. I do the DI captures, and I think they're perfectly fine. My preference is, like, for my own personal use, I never touch the DI captures. I just find there's something going on in the amp cab captures. I don't know if it's interaction with the speaker and whatnot, and which you can still, obviously, if you have things set up right when you're doing the DI, you should still have the proper, interaction going on there. But I just find it doesn't capture it quite the same way. It always tends to me to sound a little more bitey with DI captures, with everything else being equal, right? But again, whatever. I mean, if somebody's using a DI capture with whatever version of speaker or IR or they want, and it's giving them what they want, then there's your answer, right? Off you go. You're good.
And you do the same process for Tonex, Quad Cortex, and Kemper.
With the Quad Cortex, like I said, just only a couple of weeks in with it, but I've done some I captured my the Buddha amp that we were talking about before. I have a 2-Rock Studio Signature, probably like right.
Do you use the IK capture box with the others?
I do. I have that here. It's a great reamp box.
Well, it has a line isolator in it, right?
Yep.
Because I find when I don't use it, I need to use. I have a Rolls line isolator that I have to always use because you get crazy ground loop noise.
Right. I've found it to be probably one of the favorite reamp boxes I've ever used. It's great for grabbing the DIs. I also have somewhere here, I have the Kemper one as well, the Kemper split box to do the DIs, right? I got a bunch of options here, and kind of sometimes just depends on what I have set up, and
So do you make them for each one individually at a time? Like, do you just say today is Buddha day, and we're capturing the Buddha with the quad cortex, and then you just take the IO out and put the IO into the Kemper, take the IO out, put it into the Tonex?
So I have, but I mean, so there's obviously the quad cortex is very new. I did a bunch of captures with Tonex before I even had Kemper or quad cortex, so obviously those were done separate. Now I did go back and do set up again and recapture them, but they're going to be different, right? Because different day, different mic placement. There's so many. You could
Different
capture
tube age.
everything. Like you could capture the same amp 100 times and get different amazing results every time, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what the beauty of it is. I've actually, I got a cab. I don't know if you can see back here, the Rev cab. That's a 212 Celestion G12H75 cream backloaded cab. That's got to be one of the nicest cabs I've ever played through. I don't know what it is. That cab comes in. Every amp I put through it, I'm just like, wow. So I literally recaptured a lot of amps I already had captures for through that cab. It's called the Double Cream series because it's like 2 cream back speakers, right?
Yep.
And mind blowing. So you take the capture I did of one amp through, let's say, vintage 30s versus that, it's going to be wildly different, right? And both perfectly viable depending on what somebody needs or what somebody's tastes are, right? So, but yeah, I mean, ideally, lately I have done that. If I've done a capture that I'm kind of set up for, I do try to capture it on all the devices, right?
Because once you have your mic placement,
you're going to get roughly the same thing going on. You got to obviously deal with levels a little bit different between them and whatnot. But
which one's easiest to difficult? Rank the 3.
I find Kemper a bit of a pain in the butt, and I don't really know why. I don't know. I just don't enjoy doing Kemper profiles, although they're fast. I mean, you can get them done pretty quick, right? Once you're set up, once you have your tone. Tonex I find very easy, but it's more time consuming, right? And especially how I've switched over to Mac for a lot of my production work, but I had to keep my PC just for Tonex captures because I have a nice NVIDIA GPU in that. When I first got Tonex, I had an AMD GPU card in my computer, and an advanced capture would take 9.5 hours.
Wow.
So it was like, it wasn't even, you're just not going to do it, right? Imagine doing a capture pack with like 20 tone models or something.
Took you a week.
3 weeks later, you've got the thing done, right? So I quickly went up and replaced that card with an NVIDIA RTX 3070, I think. I'd have to go back.
Probably 4070.
Yeah, I think you're right. Anyways, got that. That dropped it from 9.5 hours to 16.5 minutes or something for an advanced capture, right?
No
so
brainer.
you got your 5 minutes ish of running your tones, and then but I mean, it's still time consuming. The quad cortex is kind of cool. I mean, it's a fast process. What do you total of about 4 minutes or so, 3.5, 4 minutes?
Yeah, I think it might be quicker than that.
Maybe
sometimes.
quicker. Yeah, I didn't really time it, but the first time I did it, I was like, okay, that's it. Like that's all the test signals. I'm like, there should be, and I guess that's it. And then it's like, oh, it's processing it. Oh, it's done. Look at that.
So when you're making your captures, are you doing tube mics to an interface send? Because you can only do one input.
I have, as of late, I've been using an Apollo Twin X from Universal Audio. I have some other outboard stuff as well, but yeah, so you can kind of bus it out to the one, right? I've done it a bunch of ways. I've done it out of that. I've done it through Cubase. I've done it through just a bunch of different ways, right? But yeah, a lot of times I tend to lean more towards just going with one mic, to be honest with you, though.
And do you go mic right into the capture box or mic right into the quad cortex? Like you just
I'll
go right in?
mic into whatever pre I want to go into
So you still always use a mic pre?
Absolutely, yeah. I've had some nice pre's in here, some Neve style stuff, and one of the really nice mic pre's I was using for a while was by a company called Cranbourne Audio. It's a 500 series called the Camden 500, and it could do super clean. They kind of had this, what did they call it? just basically like a color knob, but you could get a lot more color to the sound, like more like pushing a Neve really hard, right? Versus super pristine and clean. So it was kind of nice that I used that for a lot of captures. I was really happy with the results of it. You could kind of like just color things up a bit if you wanted or back it off without having to patch through a bunch of different, different mic pre's. But that was a cool one. I like that.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, but the Neural's easy. The Quad Cortex is easy to do captures on. I think it does a great job. I really haven't had it long enough to sit down and do a proper proper AB level match, performance match comparison with, say, Tonex. I've done that with Tonex and Kemper, and I did a video about that. And it was interesting because that was the one video blind test that wasn't close to 50-50. Tonex actually, basically what I did in that video is I took I reamped a performance of a riff through the real amp and then through the Tonex capture and then through the Kemper profile. And it was noticeable that Tonex was more accurate to the real thing with everything matched up properly. Now, saying that though, if you weren't comparing it side by side to the real thing at that perfect kind of matched volume and everything, I don't think anybody would have ever noticed.
And
right?
also, I feel like Kemper's thing is also that they also kind of do a little sparkle to it, don't they? A little built-in
There's
shaving some peaks with compression and a little bit of a sparkle to it. I feel like
it was on the high end that was different.
Yeah, and I think that's something that they do on purpose is what I thought from what I've researched and seen.
Absolutely.
So it's accurate versus is it good? End result.
But again, if you're not comparing it to that real thing, nobody's even going to know. You're going to plug into it, you're going to play and go, man, this sounds killer. Off you go.
Yeah.
Again, if you made me go to a gig and show up and just was going to hand me the mystery modeler, I would play the show.
With no difference. And if I swapped it out, you probably wouldn't even hear it in context.
I don't know. I don't get too bent out of shape over all of it. It's doing those tests online is interesting because I think people enjoy it and they just kind of it's more entertainment than it is anything. But
yeah, of course.
I think it should all be taken with a grain of salt. That it's not really that important in the end. Well, at the end of the day, right?
End result. Whether it's a toy or a JMP1 preamp or
absolutely
Line 6 Fractal, Quad Cortex, Kemper, whatever the hell it is, its end result has to rule all.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Do you think that you could be handed like the old Line 6 original kidney bean pod and do a decent recording with it?
I don't see why I wouldn't.
I think I would. I wouldn't be upset if somebody handed me that and said, here, put together a track. I'd figure it out.
Yeah.
I haven't used one of those in years, but...
You just turn knobs until it sounds good.
Yeah, and then, tweak it to whatever the particular, deal is at that moment.
If I had the cheat card for how to do things, then yeah.
Of course. Yeah. Not so much learning how to use it, just the pure tones at the end of it, right? And, at the end of the day, too, and this is what I think is so missed out on now, everybody's got to just play their guitar at some point.
Yes. It's easier to shop and it's easier to experiment than it is to practice.
To bitch and moan.
Yeah.
Right? Because just like sometimes I go through some internet forums and comments and stuff that are, whatever directed at me or talking to me about something. And I'm just like, does anybody actually like play guitar anymore? Like everybody just seems to spend the vast majority of their time online arguing or
researching. It's like they'll spend the time researching how to do something instead of just trial and error try it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And which is fine. There's nothing wrong with researching, right?
Of course.
Research something to a degree, but then at some point, if we never actually take this stuff and utilize it, use it, make music, it's what it's about, right? And it should be, the music thing should be probably bringing us all together more than it is polarizing us a little bit. Does that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it seems like it's so easy for people to really butt heads about seemingly unimportant things nowadays, right? It seems like it's more important for people to be right than to just play some music.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right. Well, I think that's a good one to wrap on. So
right on.
Thank you for being a part of the Silent Stage podcast, Mr. Sadites.
Sadites. Yeah, you got it. It's there. It was in there somewhere.
Potato.
Yeah, well, congrats on the podcast, man. That's great. I'm super happy you're doing it. Thank you so much for having me. That was really enjoyable.
Of course, I wouldn't think of anybody else to have on.
Oh,
so thanks for giving me your time.